Hello world and welcome to Prison Architect. So, you may have just gotten this game on Steam and you're like, hey, I don't know how to play this game. Let's look up a tutorial on YouTube. Well, that's me, or at least I hope it is anyway. This is going to teach you some of the basic systems in the game and how to use them and what controls you need to know in order to make the best use of this game. So let's get started. So if you want to start a new world, you can go up to the main menu or hit escape, and this will open up a bunch of different options. And so if you've saved the previous prison or want to load a new one, you can do that. But we're going to want to create a new prison. And for your first prison, you can have a small or medium. This is the size of the map. So small is going to be what we're going to be using. If you're new and you want to make it a little easier, you can turn off Fog of War. You can turn off all of these and turn on unlimited funds if you want it to be really easy. Unlimited fund just means you will not run out of money and you can do whatever you want. So this is basically what sandbox mode is, as it says right here when you hover over it. But we're not going to turn that on because I want to show you what it's like to have to worry about having money. And so we're going to leave the failure conditions on, and hopefully we don't fail. There we go, creating a new prison. And right away, this truck comes from the top of the road and it brings you your workers, and there's 8 workers. And your workers is how you build all of your buildings and all of your utilities and how you get stuff moved around in the prison. So I pause the game by hitting the spacebar. You can also see up here there's a toolbar that has all the different tools for the speed of the game. So if you hit spacebar, I'll pause it and play. You can also play it faster or really fast, and you can also pause, and when you hit play again it'll go that fast. Now, we don't want to go fast, we want to go slow, and I'm going to leave it paused for just a moment here. Up at the top, right here, it says 8:28 a.m. Your clock may look a little different than mine. You can change it up in the settings, but I like the digital clock. 8:28, that's our time, and time's a little unique in this game in that it's not unreasonable to build a prison in a day or two. So we have to hurry because tomorrow we're going to be getting our prisoners, and we can click this right here and we can change how many prisoners we get. So if we wanted to make it really easy and just turn off medium security, this is kind of the ratio of the security levels. So min security should be easier to manage. They won't less likely to get into fights and less likely to have traits that make them hard to manage. And so you can turn that off if you want to worry about that. But we're just going to leave that. We're going to leave it on. So we're going to have to build the prison quick. Alright. Oh, we're going to play at normal speed. There we go. So the trick to building this game is everything, well, not everything, but almost everything has to be inside. So in order to be inside, it needs to be in a building. In order for the building to exist, we need to put the foundation. That's the base of the building. So down at the bottom left is the foundation. Here we go. I prefer brick. And a lot of people know they need to build the foundation, so they go and click this and they just drag out a square or whatever. But we're going to plan first. And what I like to do is I like to plan out. You don't have to do this. You can do this any way you want. But there are certain rooms that have to be in existence in your prison in order for it to run properly. And the sizes generally have to be 5 by 5. And that's because for the holding cell, if you click this rooms tab and go over to holding cell, you can see the room requirements, and the size has to be a 5 by 5 room. And there's actually 4 different rooms that have to be 5 by 5. And so I like building these 4 rooms and use that as the entrance to my prison. So what I like to do is I like to have a hallway here. Oops. So this is going to be a hallway. And by having a hallway, it's a nice narrow choke point. Just like building a castle or many other things. By making it nice and narrow, that means only one person can really come through at a time. So that really isn't a problem for delivery because these people, the workmen, can travel through each other. But if you have guards here inside and your prisoners are escaping, or at least attempting to escape, it'll make it very hard for them to just walk around those guards. So that's a good. I like having a choke point. It also means I can put a guard in here that can check for contraband. So that's like drugs and weapons. If you put stuff in here, it has to go through here. And so I like having a nice choke point. That's just a personal preference. You don't obviously have to do it, but this is just one thing to keep in mind. And that you do have to worry about drugs, and you do have to worry about prisoners escaping. It's a prison simulator. It's to be expected. So I'm going to measure up 5 by 5. So 1, 2, 3, 5. But there's another common mistake is if it's you measure 5 by 5 is to do something like this. But the interior needs to be 5 by 5. So it actually needs to be 7 by 7 because each of the walls is one thick. So right now this is a room with the interior being 5 by 5. When we measure it, the interior is 5 by 5. And there's 3 different ways. There's walls, objects, and pathways. You don't have to do it like this. You don't have to use them in any particular way. You can use. Often I use the walkways to indicate walls, and the walls to indicate pathways, and all these different things. So here we go. Here's 2 5 by 5 rooms. So we can put a door here, a jail door here, and a jail door here, and that'll be a nice secure pathway. And then we can put other doors here. So now we have the general gist of what we want for our foundations for the entrance of our prison. So we can go and build them. And so you just click building, and you click and drag, and there we go. So I made 2 buildings, and this started to take away some of my money. You only have so much money. Now if you want more money, you're going to need prisoners. But when you're starting off, it can be hard to get prisoners and have a nice prison. So you can go over to grants and see there's a bunch of grants. And how a grant works is you take a little bit of money, and then you have to do something, and then you get more money out of it. If we scroll up to the top, Basic Detention Center. This is the starting grant. Basic Detention Center is build a prison, and if you look at the requirements, you can see that this is all things that all prisons should have because it takes care of all the prisoners' needs. And if you don't take care of your prisoners' needs, they'll get very angry, and that's not good for you. So we're going to click this grant here, and you can click any one of these other ones, but except for the education, I highly recommend not doing education just because I never can get it done. It's nearly impossible. Maybe in a later update they'll fix it, but I would just do administration center. Now we have a lot more money. As you can see, we got a lot of money, and we now see the requirements that we have to do. You can X out of this here, but if you ever want to bring it back up, it's up here in reports, or you can get it by clicking the money and just kind of going through these tabs. So now that our workers have built the foundation, we need to actually put doors in to allow them to enter. So there's different types of doors, and if you have any trouble looking for an item, you can feel free to type it. So just door. And there's different types of doors. The main difference is jail doors means that you need a guard with a key, so your workers are going to have trouble opening it as well as ordinary prisoners. So that may not be good for everything. So if I could try and put one here, then that would make it hard for my workers to get in and out, but it would make it more secure. Also, there's a couple different ways to rotate the door. Right now, this door is not rotated the proper way. You can hit the R on the keyboard, and now rotate it the proper way. You can also hit the middle mouse, or the middle mouse on your mouse. So, for now, we're just going to put ordinary doors on these 4 rooms. So these are going to be the doors that will lead the entrance of this room. So you have to think of it like a map. If you've ever seen a map of a building, they often have the doors placed where you want. And so, as you can see, my plan is kind of like its own layer. It's separate from what's actually happening. And there we go. And when you build the foundation, when you put the doors in, the walls will go all the way around automatically. So once you put a door in, the entire outer wall is automatically placed. Now to place other walls, you can put the brick wall here. There's other types of buildings and other type of walls. I like brick walls because it's the nicest looking in my opinion. And you click and drag. You can also click and drag. Let's say you accidentally place a bunch of walls where you don't want to. For example, this is a common mistake. You can use the right mouse. You can click and drag the box, and I'll delete it. So it's good that I messed up there, so that I can help others. And so now we hit play, and boom, they're going to start putting in the walls. Now, one basic utility that needs to be put in place is you can see that all these are flashing, and what these things are, these are lights. And obviously, when you're inside, it's very common to have lights inside to provide light so you can see. Now, the people in the game, they can basically see you no matter what light it is, but you won't be able to see what's happening. You as the player won't be able to see what's happening if there isn't light. It'll make everything actually a lot darker for the player. So you basically you want lights for your own sake, not necessarily for the people in its sake, but there's a lot of other utilities that need power. And so to get power is you go to utilities, and we need a generator. And so we're just going to throw this out here. I advise not putting it up against the walls because you put capacitors around it. And I like putting 3 capacitors around it, and they have to be adjacent to it. So this, if I were to place the capacitor here, it wouldn't do anything to the generator. It has to be up right next to it. It can't be kitty corner. What the capacitor does is increases the amount of power that the generator provides. I don't know how exactly to phrase it because it isn't perfectly synonymous with a real life generator. Like the capacitor just means it can store more power, not that it can generate more. But for the sake of this game, it means that this generator can provide more power. So they're going to build it, and these take a while to build, so it's always a good thing to put it on right away. And we're just going to wait for it to finish loading. But while they're doing that, we're going to go and we're going to start putting these rooms in. Now, because I accepted the grant, it highlights the things that I need to put in. So I need to put in a holding cell. Now, to put in a holding cell, we need to fill this room and make it a holding cell. But a lot of people try and think it's like the paint bucket tool, and they'll click once and they think that this entire room is filled in. No, you have to click and drag the entirety of it. And also, it won't work if you try and go outside of it. You can kind of get it to work, but many things need to be enclosed by doors, and holding cell is one of them. It needs to be enclosed by door. So if I were to put it there, it's no longer enclosed because this means it's led outside. But if I delete this one here, and only have the stuff that's actually inside, then this whole holding cell is considered to be inside. And if you can just hover your mouse over it, you can see what requirements are met and what requirements aren't. And so we need a toilet and a bench. So we go to objects, we can search for toilet, we can place one there, and we go to bench, and we can rotate it around with R, right there. And now we have a holding cell. Great. So now, when the prisoners come in, since we don't have the normal cells, all the prisoners will get sent to the holding cell. Now, if you're new to the game and you're struggling getting the ordinary cells in, it's always not a bad idea to put some beds in so that the prisoners have a chance to sleep. So this is basically where all your prisoners are going to be. And so I only have room for, I could put in 6 beds, but I don't want to put in. So I'm going to only have 3. So I'm going to go to my intake and bring it down to 3. So we'll have 2 normal and 2 min and security prisoners and 1 normal. And you can tell what security they are by the color, with gray being minimum, red being maximum, but you can't see any here. Normal being orange, and then there's a couple other unique types, but we'll get to that in a later episode. So right now we have this power station, but everything's still dark. So, and the last thing we're going to do in this episode is we're going to add some light in. And so how you have to do it is you have to send these cables in. And the one way I like to think of it, this isn't, again, a perfect metaphor because power is a little weird in this game, but I like to think of it that these are the high voltage cables. And these lights are most utilities are low voltage. And what that means is you click and drag, and this, by the way, because it's gray, means everything's happening underneath. So when I hit escape to get out of it, or I click another tab, you can see that it's going to be built, but there's a wall here. Well, these wires are going to go underneath the wall, so you don't have to worry about things lining up. When you go to utilities, the only thing your utilities have to worry about is going through other utilities. You don't have to worry about walls. So you can see that this is going to eventually need water, so we're going to need a pump. We can put that pump in right here. There's something in the way. There's a tree in the way. Oops, can't put it in the way. There's a tree. So let's just go and... That's not a water pump station. Okay, there we go. And we'll go to utilities. So now you can see that the power is heading through these high voltage cables. But right now this light isn't touching this high voltage cable. And that's why I consider this light to be low voltage. That's the metaphor. And so it doesn't need to be directly touching these high voltage wires. And so wires can come away from it, from these high voltage ones automatically. But there's a certain range. So right now, see, these aren't filled up yet. But as soon as I put just a little bit of wire in, and I'll speed up time just so that my workers can go and do it. It will flow in, and I think that the low voltage energy can flow, I think, like 20 blocks, meters, whatever the unit of each square. It can go 20 squares away. So that's good for the lights. You don't need to, for these lights, you don't need to put one of these cables underneath each of the individual lights. But you do need them in, it's advised to have them in each room. So that's the basics of utility. And one last thing before we finish up is, we'll put this in. This is something that I would consider to be high voltage. You can't just have high voltage wires somewhat nearby and have the water pump be powered. It needs to be directly hooked up to these high voltage wires. And so you can see the big lightning bolt means it has to be high voltage. If it's a little lightning bolt, it means it's low voltage. And there we go. Now I got a pump going. We can just put in, we could put it into big pipes. It's a little pipes, again, kind of continuing the metaphor between high voltage and low voltage, although I guess, since it's water, I guess you use the metaphor of pressure, high pressure and low pressure, and bam, now our toilet is working. So that's the basics of utilities, of placing buildings and doors, and rotating objects. In the next episode, we'll continue to build our basic detention center, and I will see you in the next episode.